Sean, who I'm super, super grateful and excited to have here, both really experienced facilitators and space holders, very woven in with the work of Youth by Youth and the Weaving Lab, and people who we, really deeply respect. And particularly the piece of work that they're going to be helping us explore together is the Togetherness practice, which when I think you both first created it and Zineb sent it to me, I thought, this is amazing. And this feels so different. And actually, beautifully, it's hosted on the internet, right? It's caught up in the web of technology that we've just been exploring, but feels like a real portal of intimacy and connection. So I'm going to pass over to both of you. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Ela, and thanks for having us. And thanks, Karen, for that really thought-provoking session and the calm that you're bringing to the space as well. It's got me in a lovely mindset actually to do this session. I'm Sean, and I met Ela on a different conversation, which was really interesting because it was about how we create intergenerational spaces to move new thinking forward, and that's kind of what I've been about really through my work with Ashoka, and that's what brings me here. We want to share a piece of work, a practice that we're going to invite you to do over the next hour and a half, in a way, hopefully, that just stimulates your curiosity and gives you an appetite to take it away with you, to delve deeper, and to think about how you might integrate that as a source of support for yourself and for others. So Ela's right, there's quite a lot of discussion around how do we resource ourselves for time between worlds. I guess that was the starting question we had in instigating the togetherness practice. And it's very much in the territory of the how. How might we do that? What do those practices, what do those spaces and learning experiences look like? So I'm going to hand over to Vipin now, who was the inspiration actually for the togetherness practice and got me and my friend or a colleague Lauren involved in it. And we're going to do a couple of meditations and then get into a couple of practices. And if I see some of you have been able to uncamera yourself. Some of you are still there, particularly when we go into paired practice. It would be really lovely if we can do that face to face, unless there are any obstacles for you. So over to you, Vipin.
Oh, thanks, Sean. Hello, everyone. I'm Ela. I'm guessing if there is a way you can unpin Sean and me, so we get to see everyone. So in the spirit of togetherness, it feels awkward just to see me and Sean's face. There we go. See, it's so much more beautiful. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. So I'll just say two sentences before I want to just go into a quick practice. So a lot of this 90 minutes, I always say we are not going to talk about the mango, or we're not going to talk about eating the mango. We're going to eat the mango, right? So we're not going to talk about togetherness. We're going to have the felt, embodied experience of togetherness together. And so what I think Karen was speaking, there is a complexity that is coming, that is already here in what it means to be human on planet Earth in today's world. And we deeply believe that we can't think our way into the future. It requires us to access intelligences beyond our thinking mind. So as a human being, I would say we have access to 4 different intelligences. The intelligence of the mind, which a lot of us are really good at, the intelligence of the body, the intelligence of the heart, and the intelligence of spirit. Spirit, soul, Atman, whatever is that word which you use to describe your connection to something that is larger than yourself. So don't get trapped up in the word spirit if that doesn't work for you. Some people use nature, some people use Gaia, whatever it is, use that word. So that is one. And then the second piece is to build this new world, especially a world which is learning from the mistakes of the current world. We believe that the solutions are not just going to come from Vipin or Sean or a Zinab or an Ayla or a Karen. It's going to come from the spaces between us. There is a Celtic poet called John O'Donoghue who said, "Bless the space between us." right? So how do we be in relationships with each other that something larger than us can come through us and manifest itself in the world? But to create that, you need to create the environment and the conditions for togetherness. And that's where this work is going to come from. Is coming from. So I just want to give you a heads up for those of you who are off camera, and if you are like me, multitasking, listening, and also doing 100 different things, which is one of my bad habits, which I'm trying to solve for. In 10 minutes, we are going to go into a partner practice. So I'm just giving you an advance heads up. It would require you to be present, to be with another human being face to face. So just giving you a heads up. So if you can orient yourself to be on camera in 10 minutes time. All right. So we're going to, one of the foundational skills to create the environment of togetherness is the capacity of awareness. A different language for the word awareness is to slow down. There is this beautiful African poet who said, the times are urgent, let's slow down. So let's start with slowing down. And so what I'm going to invite you to do is we're going to do this twice. Find someone on the Zoom screen, just any person. Someone's, maybe their background is interesting to you, or their hairstyle looks really exciting, whatever. Someone whom you are drawn to, and place your attention on their Zoom window. And I'm going to invite you into 4 breaths, just 4 breaths. Sorry, my 3.5-year-old son has also joined the conversation, so we'll see how this goes. So the first breath is to say, I breathe for me. So take a breath for yourself. I breathe for me. And the second breath is to the person, pay your attention to the person whom you chose on the screen. I breathe for you. So just look at that person and just take a breath. I breathe for you. Now the third breath is I breathe for us. So as you place your attention on that person, I just breathe for us. Okay. And the last breath is for I breathe for all that surrounds us. So just take another breath. Yeah. And just notice what happens to you. So we're going to do this one more time. So it's 4 intentional, mindful breaths. Yeah. So first, I breathe for me. I breathe for you. I breathe for us. I breathe for all that surrounds us. Yeah, and so just now letting that go and just notice what happens to you in your own presence for your capacity to be here. And we're going to now try one more different flavor of practice. So to give credit where credit is due, I'm not surprised that my 3.5-year-old showed up. This is because I got this one of his children's books. It says the great love of rose and thorns. It's like this. So any of you are interested in where that came from, children's books. Really source of a lot of wisdom, in my opinion. All right, Sean, back to you.
Beautiful, Vipin. Thanks. And I just felt an expansiveness there, which was just really nice. Pausing and the practice of pausing with intentionality, that's the kind of foundation stone, really, of the practice, the togetherness practice. And I just wanted to introduce another example of that. It's only a minute long. That's why it's couples quite nicely with the prior one. It's I don't know whether Mohini you can get it ready. That'd be brilliant. Now this practice has come actually from the Findhorn Foundation. There's an incredible elder up there called Joy Drake, who's in her early 80s now. And the Findhorn is an eco-spiritual community in north of Scotland. Some of you may be familiar with it. Joy has been there for many decades. And this is actually a series of meditations that she wrote when she was in her early 30s, apparently, and they're still as resonant, and they're so relevant and resonant now, I think, in these particular times, and they really, for me, speak to our aspirations for the practice as well. It's also beautiful that it's an intergenerational moment, and it speaks to the times that we're in, because Joy put these together in this particular way to support a group that she was working with who were appealing to her for support around the election and the fallout from that in the US. So she created some meditations for hope. This is one of them, and I've just put in the chat where you can sign up and just and get access to the others. They're beautiful things. Feel free. She'd be delighted if you use them. And Mohini, if you just guide us through, if you just press play, we can just indulge ourselves really in this beautiful minute of silence and reflection.
We are each a gift to the other. No need to cover up. Let go of your old trappings. Plain and fancy wrappings are expensive, worthless, and useless because there's no need to hide. Let the barriers fall away. Become visible. Become yourself. As barely, as essentially, as wholly as you are. We are changing. Sometimes it seems very slow, sometimes very sudden, but we are changing, and as we do so, the world changes. This is the work.
There's some appreciation in the room for that. And I don't think it needs any unpacking, really. It just speaks for itself. And what I love about it is how those thoughts are so resonant and maybe coming into their own, actually, as we move forward with this kind of work. Vipin.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So shifting gears, just to bring in a playful dimension of togetherness, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And if the answer to that question is yes for you, raise your hands, right? And if you are not on camera, you can raise your Zoom hands, okay? So, and this is a way to orient to say, before any body of work happens in the world, how do you first build the relational field between humans, right? The relational field enables the magic to happen. So here's a fun way to understand who's in the room. Raise your hand if you are left-handed. Wow, no one left-handed. That's interesting. All right. Okay. Raise your hands if you like Coke over Pepsi. Okay, some Coke fans showing up. Okay, right. Okay, so when I say thank you, lower your hands. All right. Raise your hands if you like dogs more than cats. Okay. Anna can't contain her enthusiasm there. All right, so 50-50 balance about dogs and cat fans. Sounds good. Raise your hand if in the last 1 month you have traveled outside your country. Okay, some travelers and frequent flyer miles status people here, I'm guessing. Good. Right, thank you. Raise your hand if you're a parent. Okay, me too. So it's just me and Zinab and Sean. Huh? Great. Okay. Raise your hands if you have parents who are alive. Okay, good. Lower them, thank you. Raise your hands if you have parents who still drives you up the wall once in a while. Ah, universal. Oh, except for Ron. Ron is like, I have the best parents ever. Great, awesome. Lower your hands. Okay, let's see. Raise your hands if you have a spiritual practice, a daily spiritual practice, whatever is spiritual for you. Beautiful. Thank you. Raise your hands if you wish you had a daily spiritual practice. Sinam's like, yes, me. young parents is not always the easiest thing to do. Thank you. Raise your hands if your heart breaks when you see what's happening around the world. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, I'm guessing that's one of the reasons why we showed up here too, right? On a conversation like this. Thank you. Raise your hands if there are moments in the last 1 month you have felt helpless because of the state of the world it's in. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Raise your hands if you wish you could lose at least 5 kilos or 5 pounds of body weight. Okay, except for Brian, everyone. Oh no, there's a bunch of people who don't. So they're like perfectly happy with their body weight. Fantastic. All right, beautiful. Okay, so so you see, this is a curiosity exercise, right? But just notice what just opened up in the space. Like just sense your heart in this moment. Like just compare to what it was 3 minutes ago when we were doing meditation. What's here right now for you, which was not there just 3 minutes ago? Can anyone share on the chat or on unmuting themselves? Like test your heart. All right. Togetherness, deeper desire to connect. What is possible just now? Like something got opened up in the space. Okay, seems like you guys are all expert chatters. I should give up any expectation that people will unmute themselves and say something. What happened to all that world, right? Share knowledge and service. Yeah, thank you. So just look at that thing, right? So this is the flavor of what we call by the relational field. So what I experienced was laughter opened up, right? There was a bit more joy. There was a bit more ease in the space. People showed up with a bit more presence, like they were engaged in the conversation. So this is an example of what we call the togetherness of the human experience on planet Earth, the sense of what it means to be human in a world where our lives have been defined by technology and social media, as the previous speaker was saying. So we're going to go into a practice. So for those of you who are off camera and who needs a heads up in 5 minutes, if you want to do the practice, we would invite you to come on your camera. So the togetherness practice, as Sean was saying, it showed up after 2.5 years of research. And what we were initially going after was we wanted to find the Alcohol Anonymous version for human transformation. What are not personality different programs, but what are core principles which any group of human beings anywhere in the world can come together to self-actualize into their individual and collective highest potential. So when Lauren and Sean and I and a few others were working on it, we honestly did not know what we were looking for, but we thought we will interview 170 change makers, social entrepreneurs, business entrepreneurs, young change makers, educational entrepreneurs, basically trying to map the journey of the human soul when it comes to any process of creating change. Can you guys see my screen? Can someone say a thumbs up or yes?
Yes.
Thanks, Anna. So we're calling this the Changemakers instrument for activating individual and collective potential. So the way we're going to rewire our time together, I'm gonna, for those of you who are oriented towards theory, I'm going to speak very briefly about the framework. We're going to go into the practice. We're going to debrief the practice, and then Sean is going to tell you more about the content of it. But very quickly, for those of you who likes concepts, what the research of 170 change makers over 2.5 years showed was there were these internal capacities and external conditions. So to thrive in times of rapid change, there are these 4 capacities that one needs to practice within oneself. Awareness, meaning making, our capacity to know how we are making meaning of what happens in the world or what happens to us. The self-permission is the capacity to give yourself the permission to do something, and then the capacity of responsibility. So it's not just about going and doing your own work on yourself, but how do you as change makers create conditions that helps other people to discover their own change maker potential? So in your teams, in your families, in your homes, in your churches, in your communities, in your corporations, is there a culture of receptivity? So think about it right now, the teams you're a part of, is there a culture of reflection? How often do you guys slow down to reflect on if the work you're doing is actually having the impact which your heart was hoping it would have? Is there a sense of belonging, interdependence, connection, responsiveness? And equally importantly, is there a culture of emergence? Like you're not attached to your idea or your plan, but you're willing to go with the flow of life and change and adapt and be fluid as things change. So this was February 2023, and we were all feeling very pleased with ourselves because we had a really nice website, really color-coded. We had these 8 capacities, inner and outer, and we were feeling very pleased with ourselves, But those moments when you think you figured life out and then life comes with a brick and bangs on your head. Yeah, my life has been a series of those because something felt missing. And we couldn't, for the life of us, try to understand what that was until we realized if you really look at these things, none of this thing is new. Religion and spirituality has been saying this for thousands of years. But here's the catch. Religion has been telling us to go do inner work. The world hasn't changed. And they've been talking to us for 10,000 years. In the last 40 years, the nonprofit sector came in and said, let's change the systems, right? But we are not close to solving any one social problem. 40 years later, billions of money getting poured into the nonprofit world. We're not close to solving one social problem. So then the question becomes, what's missing? So when we looked back at the data, what we realized was it's not just inner work and outer social systems change. There is something in between. And that's what we call the relational field. That transformational change, not transactional change. Transformational change doesn't happen in watching social media or watching inspiring documentaries. It also doesn't happen going to Costa Rica or going to a yoga retreat or doing a meditation practice by yourself. Change happens in the relational spaces between human beings, like it happens between us, where there is authenticity and connection and trust and belonging. Then that's the nature, that is the territory in which change happens. So when we looked at the change, what we realized was there were rhythms on how this happens. And we are happy to share this website with you. And Sean, if you could actually put the link on the chat. When anytime any group of human beings come together to pause, to slow down, to take a breath together, to connect with the human being and not just the human doing. Think about it. How many of us go from one Zoom call to the other every single day, or one meeting to the other? Without forgetting the doing is there, but what about the human being, right? The second is patterning, right? Think about the relationships in your life which you have pushed away, not because there is a big, heavy presence of conflict. Some of it there is, but relationships where there is something is not clean, not something doesn't feel safe. So you kind of push those people away and keep them at an arm's distance. What we found was patterning is the capacity of perspective taking. It's not a skill, it's a capacity. It's a very different ball game. And it's like the very places where relationships break down, when approached with curiosity, not judgment, with curiosity, becomes the portal for a deeper breakthrough. That the very places of disconnection becomes the portals for connection. The third dimension which we found was the capacity of trusting and truthfulness. That in any relationships, to deepen the relationship is, can you share your experience of truth in the moment from a place of love and respect? That's important. So it's not to say a truth so that I can prove someone wrong or prove my point of view right, but to say your experience of truth in the moment from a place of love and respect. And finally, the capacity of enacting. So when you go through pausing, when you go through patterning, when you speak your truth, then what is the new possibilities of ideas which is there, and how can we take action on them? And Sean is going to answer any questions you may have on this. So here's what we're going to do. Sean is going to paste this link to you on your site. So may I request, if you can go to the togethernesspractice.org website right now, because you will need this to go into the practice. And then if you're on your mobile phone, on the top right-hand corner, there are these 3 lines, 3 dashes. So click on it. If you're on your laptop, you will see something called the practice guide on right at the top in the menu folder. And you click on practice guide, and second page opens up. And so what we've found about the togetherness practice is that the 12 capacities fits in really beautifully to the intelligence of the body, the mind, the heart, and spirit. But you can play with it later if you're interested. But we understand that relationships are hard for a lot of us. So what we have built is 90 seconds, 90 minutes, 90 hours, 90 days, and 90 years of practice, because we will always be in relationship till the day we die. So we are going to do a modified version of this practice right now. So once you click on practice guide, once you scroll down, you will see a section called a 90-minute reflection, and click on try it, the going deeper box. And that opens up this. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second to see if you guys are tracking the directions. Are you guys figured out? Anyone who's still struggling on figuring out where things are? Okay, Sinap is giving me a thumbs up. Anyone else? If you are on Instagram right now, raise your hands. It was a trick question. All right, great. So you guys found it, right? So here's how the practice is going to go. So in a moment, Ila is going to send us into a practice pair. And here's how the practice will play out. So you're going to come together in a Zoom room. It's a 90-minute reflection, and it's a practice called How Can We Get Unstuck? So think about a situation in your life where you feel stuck. It could be personal, it could be professional, it could be spiritual, it could be emotional, whatever it is under the sun, right? If you're like, I don't feel like I have anything, I'm not stuck anywhere in my life. If you're one of those people, let me know. I'll give you some of the places in my life I feel stuck, so you can work on it, right? So if you feel like you don't have anything you're stuck with. So what you're going to do is, so for example, if Zinab and I are partners, we are going to decide who's partner A and partner B. So Zinab is going to say, if she's partner A, she's going to say, each person will have 10 minutes for the practice. 1 or 2 sentences about the situation in their life they feel stuck. So for example, I would say, I'm trying to build more intimacy and friendship in my relationship with my mother, but I feel stuck because every time I do it, she says something and it drives me up the wall. That's a situation I want support with, right? So what Vipin will do, once Sinap shares her situation, what Vipin will do as the person who's is the coach would be say, I'm going to trust my intuition and choose 1 question from the heart, 1 question from the mind, 1 question from the body, 1 question from spirit, and ask Sinap that question with the intention to help her get unstuck. So my role as a friend and as a witness is to just ask the question. I don't want to fix. I don't have to be Zinab's therapist. I don't need to solve this for her. I just have to bring my curiosity and ask her the question. And every time I ask a question, give her a few minutes of time to respond to that. Silence is okay. You don't have to jump in and come up with the most immediate answer. But as the question lands, take a breath and have that experience of what happens when you drop a rock on a piece of still water. Let the questions ripple on your being and let the answer come. After I finish that in 10 minutes and we're going to switch, both of us are going to say one thing I'm learning about myself is. So Sinap is going to say what she's learning about herself. Vipin is going to say what I'm learning about himself. And we're going to switch roles. So we will help you to keep time. But then Vipin is going to say one thing, I feel stuck with this, and Sinap is going to choose one question from the heart, one from the mind, one from the body, and ask that question to me with the intention of helping me get unstuck. How does that sound? Is that clear? Anyone feels like I have no idea what's going on? Which is okay. We'll work with you on that.
I don't
Sounds
know.
good? Okay. So remember, go to your partner, say hello, maybe try the breathing practice. Don't jump into it. Now, some of you, human beings, some of you are like thinking, wow, I need to come up with the most brilliant question that will have a breakthrough experience for my partner. No, none of that shit. Let that go with your next exhale. Your request, as a person who's asking the question and listening, give your partner the biggest gift you can give them, the gift of your presence, which means to be with that person instead of getting hijacked by our own thought process. And for the person who's responding, use this as an invitation to slow down and sense and access intelligences which is deeper than your thinking mind, right? So go slow. Everything that comes up is an okay space. And one thing which I'll say before you go is anything that is said of a personal nature between both of you, that remains between both of you. So if you're okay with confidentiality, hands up. So look around and see. Cornell's hand is still not up, so we're all waiting for Cornell's hand to come up. Cornell is like, I'm not sure if I should do this verb of confidentiality. Okay. But if you can't do that, we don't do the practice, right? So it's important to create that safe space for everyone. So check with your partner before you start, especially since people are offline, if confidentiality, because it's important for you to feel safe in the space. Any questions? So for those of you who might be needing that, I'm putting on the chat the direct link to the site, and that will give you the questions. All right. I'll send us to the room. Enjoy. If you need help, raise your hands. Sean and I can come and help you get it. But 10 minutes per person. Derek, I like the smile you have on your face. It feels like you're up to some mischief in your small groups. I'm slightly concerned. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, welcome back. Yeah. So just to get a flavor of what's here right now in your hearts, bodies, minds, and spirits, by the powers vested in you with the reaction button on Zoom, choose an emoticon which is a reflection of where your heart is in this moment. Let's see what's there in the field. Just choose an emoticon. Where's your heart right now? Take a breath, sense your heart. What's here right now? Beautiful. Yeah. So anyone either on the chat or unmuting yourself, just to share, what was that like to be in contact with another human being, talking about something which is important and real for you in a way which was meaningful, and complete strangers? Breeze. Oh,
I think it was a mistake. I raised my hand.
hi, Breeze.
Hello. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, were you about to say something, or did you accidentally raise your hands?
I have so many things to say, but I would prefer to listen from others first.
Oh, okay. Very diplomatic answer. Breeze is playing a diplomatic card. All right, Asma and Derek.
Okay. So you guys could see that I've been smiling since we came out from the breakout rooms, right? I had a conversation. Am I supposed to say who I had a conversation with, or that's confidential?
Just tell us what was your experience. Don't tell us the content of the conversation. We just want to know what was your experience like.
So first of all, the practice is interesting, right? To be able to be vulnerable with a total stranger who on a normal day, the conversations that you guys have wouldn't be it wouldn't merit your mood if you had those conversations with yourself, wanting to accept those things as truth. But taking the program right from the onset with how you described it, I feel a little unstuck. Like I feel unstuck as to how I felt previously, and looking forward to, a deeper understanding of how this practice could influence my understanding about myself. I feel, I feel more light and hopeful, to live life better. Yeah.
You feel more light and hopeful?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Derek.
Sure.
What else? Anyone else?
So I remember the previous speaker was talking about technology, and I was more about like how technology has impacted us from disconnecting from each other and stuff. And when you came in for this session, when we had the breakout room, it's literally the most amazing experiences that we're maybe from different countries apart and stuff, but how we can be so vulnerable and have that human deep connection from strangers that I believe AI will never reach the limits to experience that, to showcase how it actually feels to have that deep human connection. And that's something so amazing and impactful for especially us as humans. It's just wonderful in a way. Yeah.
Azan, I'm curious. So did you have a deep human connection just now?
I definitely did, and I really appreciate that.
Where are you? Where's your heart right now? Because you had a deep human connection. In 10 minutes.
Yeah. Thinking about basically the whole conversation right now, but right now I'm grateful. I'm just grateful. Yeah.
Grateful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe one more perspective. Did anyone struggle with it? Or was that, I know there were some Zoom complications. Was there someone who felt like, oh, I feel like a tender place right now, or a vulnerable place?
Is it okay if I share?
Of course.
Like you may listen to a question and then you understand it from a different perspective, but then if someone else responds to the same question, they help you understand yourself better. I think I was in that mode, like throughout the questions, there are times when my colleague, I was with Azan, and Azan asked me a question. I looked at it from a different perspective, but then when he responded to the same question, it opened me up in a different way. I saw something else that I had not totally seen about myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a good thing to recognize for yourself, Brian.
Yeah.
So here's, I'm going to transition to Sean in a second, but what if I were to tell you what you just did, even though I said get unstuck by asking questions? What if I were to tell you it's got nothing to do with getting unstuck? Getting unstuck or having an aha moment was the byproduct. But what we were really going after was something deeper. And let's give you an example of that. Look at the person with whom you did the exercise with. Like look at their camera or their black box, Zoom black box, because they refuse to show up on camera, right? And then sense your heart. And ask sense into what's there in the relational space between you just now, after this practice. Like, so don't sense your heart, don't sense their heart, sense the heart, the space between you. And either on the chat or on the mute, tell us what's the flavor of connection which you're feeling right now. Joy, trust. What else? What's there in that connection? Sense your heart. Don't think your way into it. Sense your heart. It will tell you. Comfort, guidance, care, friendliness, peace. So just look at what people are experiencing. Right? This, my friends, is our birthright as a species. Who wants more peace in their life? Raise your hands. Who wants more joy in your life? Raise your hand. We just figured it out in 20 minutes. Me and Sean just created the space. You guys asked it and you created it. That's the potential of togetherness. That's the potential. That's our birthright as a species. That is what AI, as Anwar was saying, can never replace for, because it comes from the place of the soul and the spirit. So our invitation, but it's one thing I would also say, some of you might be thinking, oh, it's one thing to do this with a complete stranger on Zoom whom I'll never see each other. Sure. But I would invite you to go do this practice with someone who you are struggling with in relationship right now and see what opens up. Maybe your parents who's driving you up the wall, or your partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, friends, right? Like anyone, the potentiality of the practice, the potentiality of togetherness is the recognition of when there is breakdowns, the breakdowns becomes the portal for deeper connection, deeper joy, deeper humanity. And now my last question before I pass this on to Sean, think about someone with whom you really struggle with. Someone who absolutely drives you bananas, right? Now sense the relational field here. Imagine that person being here. So one of a favorite character who's everyone's whipping boy is the current president of the United States. Let's get Trump here. Or forget your politics. Maybe you love Trump. Maybe let's get Biden or Kamala Harris here. Someone who, like whoever, both polarities of spectrums. This relational field can hold them. That's what the power of this thing is, that any work you do in the world, before you do the work, how do you care about creating the relational field? Now I'll pass this on to Sean. I have a 3.5-year-old son who woke up at 3 a.m. vomiting, so I need to excuse myself because I need to take him to the doctors. The pleasures of parenting. Some of you will experience it soon, hopefully sooner than later. But Sean is going to share with you another round of the togetherness practice, and you guys can have a conversation about how you might play with it. If you like using it and you have some powerful experiences, do let us know. But remember, if God is love, just with the 20-minute practice, you just touch the face of God in each other. So I just want to leave you with that. Lots of love. Bye, Sean.
Thank you, Vipin, and all the best with Orion. That was beautiful. And we've got maybe 10, 15 at the outside minutes because I want to give everybody a comfort break before you go into the next session. I've fantasized quite a bit over the last week or so about doing the togetherness practice with our friend, Mr. Trump, as Vipin alluded to there. And partly because as we were researching it, there was lots of kind of quotes that resonated, but one that just stays with me so regularly, actually, which is, that you can't change people. All you can do is connect them with the love that resides within their own hearts. And, we need spaces for that, actually, and we need to curate those spaces. And I wanted to kind of lead you into the consideration of our own capacity to do that. What is the texture of those spaces? What do those spaces look like? And how do we grow as we become more familiar with the practice and how we can hold space for others? And how do we grow in consideration of what makes us stuck? Because one of the other really resonant quotes for me from the research, from the practice, is the idea that what's in the way is the way, which is a quote I'm sure that many of you will be familiar with. But it's how do we lean into this sticky stuff, the mucky stuff that we normally, repel from, but how do we actually lean into that full of the knowledge that that's where we need to be right now? I think the practice is grounded in an aspiration that we can take responsibility for evolving ourselves. One of the things that that Vipin is fond of saying has inspired me, you know, is that, you know, this is about the evolution of human consciousness, and how do we become not just the best versions of ourselves, but how do we make promises that are kind of beyond our own capability right now? Because kind of that's the space almost that we need to be in, and what might be the tools and instruments that can support us with that. I'm just going to share and go back to that screen for a moment, and then we might get 5 minutes to consider those capacities. Can everyone see that? No, that's just the homepage of the practice, and that was the challenge we were given. You know, activating individual and collective potential. That's why I think that kind of evolutionary bit and the intentionality that we bring to that is really key. You know, I do this practice a lot with educators. You know, I work at the University of Worcester, and you know, it's a dream really to be able to get right in there to people who are leading schools and present this and really kind of get into the detail of this with them, so that they're able to see the world as they're holding it, and also zoom back from that. And the word that came up a lot in the feedback was perspectives. So zooming back from that and seeing it from different perspectives, challenging their own perspective in the way that they're holding things, and then move forward and be able to move forward in maybe a more sensitive way. And the intentionality is just such an important part of this, I think. And that's why we've tried to codify something here, because really the richness is in the dialogue, of course, and what we heard from speaking with people about what unlocks their potential is that in these spaces, certain capacities are evident, and certain capacities help us to curate those spaces and to do that intentional growing and evolution that we want to grow, that we want to do. And their spaces of their capacities of awareness and meaning making and self-permission and responsibility. And Vipin has kind of unpacked these to a certain degree. I was really curious about how much they showed up in the feedback just from your one short experience with the practice just now, and how particularly meaning making and perspective taking is an important element of this. Our ability to do deep listening, to reverse our perspectives, to enter the space of somebody else, to see things deeply from their perspective, and then to allow that to challenge how we're holding things. So that for me is something that, you know, I'm just working on all the time. And before we consider these capacities, you know, something that's significant for me is the way in which this has changed me. You know, I'm a kind of 54-year-old white middle class kind of, well, now middle class sort of bloke, you know. And as I was getting into this, I was starting to apply it to the relationships around me. And, you know, I think it's true to say that it's added so much value to the depth of my relationship with my wife and with my children. And it's because I've been trying to do that thing at the bottom there, and those two capacities of self-permission and responsibility. You know, how am I responsible for the conditions that I'm creating in the space between us? Because it's within the space between us that the connection is going to emerge from. And how am I equipping myself to respond to things when they show up? So responsibility as our ability and capacity to respond to things with humanity, with humility, and with the other people's perspectives in mind. And that's just been really enriching for me. And it's, you know, it also teaches me that we enter this where we are. And for me, this is like definitely an ongoing journey. So I'd like to invite you to think about your own capacities. There's some questions that are in the practice guide, but actually I'll just show you where that is. So if you go into the practice guide there and follow them down, underneath where we're stuck are some questions that take you into a little zone of reflection about your internal capacities. Where are they strong? where do they need more work? But actually, rather than going through all them, because we don't really have the time, maybe we can just take a little, I'll put some abridged questions in the chat. And if we go into really a chat, just rooms for like 5 minutes or so, and just have a brief chat with somebody, hopefully with the same people you were working with before, just have a brief chat about when you see those capacities, where do you see yourself within them? What are you working on? What do you kind of love about the capacity that might be a strength? You won't get through all those questions, just choose one of them. Where do you lean towards? Where do you feel like you need more opportunities to grow? So if you just go in for 5 minutes or so, then we can come back and have a little bit of a debrief.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So definitely join us if you can.
And I think it's a testament to what you and Vipin are talking about, Sean, that, like yesterday we had an open mic and we sang together online. And it was messy, it was beautiful. And, today we'll do our individual dancing in our rooms.
Amazing.
But like what the relational field, the prep work has been done, right? So like at the end of these 2 days, you can ask people to bring that vulnerability in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're dancing with ourselves and relating to ourselves. It's the interplay. The dance is how do I relate to myself and how do I relate to others in this space? Cool. Nice to see you all back, folks. And I'm just really curious. We've only got a couple of minutes, like 2 or 3 minutes. First question, really, like, what was going on for you? How did you relate to the exercise, and what was going on in you and between you? And does anybody want to speak to that?
I can talk a little bit. So I'm not going to name my partner in the spirit of privacy and confidentiality, but I feel like a new best friend who just lives far away from me. And it was just easy. It was like having someone to, like a therapist without paying a therapist or a therapist coach, maybe. I don't know. So it was lovely, and it made me feel good, and it made me feel like I had direction in terms of like I have a lot of strengths in the situation I'm struggling with, and now I can move forward.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Sorry. We are smiling back and forth at each other. You can tell who our partners.
That's really lovely, and there is such a lot of energy here. Just as a final reflection, then, just picking up on what you're saying, Anna, if you had more of these capacities, how might it impact your relationships, do you feel? If you had an abundance, Carmen was talking about abundance and abundance mindsets, if you had an abundance of these capacities, which we all have in varying degrees, of course, and we were to utilize those capacities, what could it do for us in terms of our relationships? And either speak to that or stick some notes in the chat, maybe. Yeah, more ease and flow. Yeah, more flow and ease. And change the world. Beautiful. And feeling yeah, because that is a powerful statement of resourcing, self-resourcing, Anna, that you'd feel invincible and more of the present and less of the past. Beautiful. Thank you, Ermin. Amazing. Lovely. Great. Great. Well, I want to leave you some time to a bit of self-care for your next session. And I'd just like to kind of leave by saying thank you. So it's always a privilege to play with the togetherness practice with people. And it's just been a wonderfully insightful for me. And I just find it so reaffirming all the time that the openness and generosity really with which people approach the practice. I'm just really curious and just really excited about how it might live in the world. So if you start using it, then do feed it back to myself, feed it back to Vipin, and enjoy the singular dancing and everything else that is ahead of you. Thank you very much indeed. Cheers.